Hey everyone, welcome to Road Trip to Bliss. I'm here with Katie Green, and we are going to have some amazing conversation today. She is a neurodivergent mental health coach and consultant. And Katie, I'm just gonna leave it to you to uh, to introduce yourself more in detail. So tell me the story about how you got started and what's the story behind Hope Reignited Consulting, and take it from there.
Okay, so hi everybody. My name is Katie Green, founder of Hope Reignited Consulting. I got my start and my vision about 10 years ago. I wanted to help people create a life they did not need to escape from. I didn't know what that would look like. So initially, I started pursuing a path of licensure. I was going to become a licensed therapist, and I knew that I needed to get through education. I needed a minimum of a master's degree and supervised hours and all of that. And what ended up happening was it was extremely difficult to find placement for those hours. And I realized that I could work as an addiction counselor and get paid a little bit more, or at least like be assured that I would get paid, because in many of the hours placements that I would find, um, it would be volunteer or
Mm,
it would be connected to school. So I would do 3 days a week of classes and 2 days a week of placement for getting hours. And that didn't line up with my life or how I came to find later how my brain works. And so I had gone down a path of doing addiction counseling, and I was an addiction counselor for several years. I worked at an outpatient methadone clinic in San Fernando Valley, California, and I learned very quickly that when people are treating addiction, they are not just treating addiction. They are treating trauma, they're treating undiagnosed mental health issues, and they're treating complex family dynamics.
mm,
And so, what became of that, this was also through a pandemic. I was an essential worker through a pandemic because I worked at a methadone clinic. And so I would see patients every single day um, because they needed their methadone. And had I not been in a medical setting, I would have been um, restricted to working virtually. So, for somebody with my mind, with my neurotype, I'm autistic. For somebody with my mind, I need to be around people. I
mm,
was living alone, and so if I was also ordered to work from home, that would be no sense of community, no belonging, no routine, which are so important for somebody that is autistic. And so that's how my experience was like as an addiction counselor. And as I stepped away from the clinical path, I invested in a business coach and I started to put my ideas to paper and started to bring my vision to life. And what I found was I found four distinct steps that I believe are key for people to sustain their recovery outside of the walls of therapy. I
mm,
call this my focus four. My focus four are self advocacy, somatic peace, dignity preserving conflict resolution, and emotional health related to emotion regulation and expression. Those, if people can get very familiar and very comfortable with those four things, they will have an easier time at sustaining their recovery. It won't be easy, but at least it'll be more manageable than trying to do it on their own. And so the company that I created, Hope Reignited, is about giving people a second way of doing things, a second way of breaking cycles in their family that no longer serve them,
Mm,
a second way of breaking life controlling habits that they want to step away from because they believe themselves and their kids deserve better.
wow. That's awesome. And can you explain a little bit more in depth of what each four of those things mean exactly?
So, self advocacy is the ability to stand up for yourself. It is
Mm,
the ability to ask questions without being afraid and ask questions without your inner voice just kind of talking you out of it. Because sometimes we'll get in a space where it seems like everybody knows this. I'll just shut up and Google the answer. And I don't actually need to ask anyone this. Nope, you do.
right?
Because
No dumb
Google
questions.
is Google's often wrong or too many results,
Too many results. Yep.
and that gives some overload because there's too many options to sift through. And so self-advocacy is the reassurance and the knowledge that you are worthy of the information that you want. You are worthy of asking questions without being made to feel small or stupid. And self-advocacy is the ability to know your rights and stick up for them when somebody tries to walk over them because you deserve as much love and care as the next person.
I love that. Love that. That's
Um,
huge.
mhm. Somatic peace is about having peace within the body and having um, being friends with your body, not having stomach upsets, having regular bowel movements, having a steady sleep routine, having a good relationship with food and movement. I stepped away from saying exercise because I began to see movement for what it was: endorphins, quality time,
Mm,
and better sleep. When I was in the mindset of, I need to exercise, I need to do X amount of activities, or it became a numbers game. And for somebody who has lived with black and white thinking for years, I did not want to step into a numbers game. I didn't I didn't want to deal with that. I just wanted to focus on a group of people are going to play volleyball and it's going to be great because I'm not it's not something I excel at, but I'm going to have a good time with my friends. It'll take the energy out of me so I can sleep better and I'll feel less stressed. That's how I began to see exercise. And so somatic peace is really about building a friendship with your body. It is really about not putting your body through more stress. And when it encounters stress, because we are living in a stressful world, you have a plan to regulate, to calm yourself down, and to self soothe. And the stress won't last as long because you have a plan.
right. Wow. I love movement versus exercise. That's
Yeah.
that's
People,
brilliant. I'm
people in
using that.
the people that have any sort of experience with disordered eating recovery will absolutely know about the movement versus exercise discussion because
Wow.
disordered eating and exercise compulsion and difficult exercise mindsets and behaviors, the two are actually best friends.
Hmm.
So if you fix your mindset with exercise, if you fix your mindset with movement, then your relationship with your body will also in general improve, because
Wow.
you got to disconnect. You got to absolutely disconnect from things that are numbers, things that you can get compulsive over. You got to disconnect from it.
It's interesting because I have also suffered from eating disorders from a very young age. Started
Mhm.
with started with anorexia, um, and I couldn't even tell you where I came up with that. Like I don't know how I had a very bad body image growing up,
Mhm.
and I suffered with that, and then everybody around me I had lost a lot of weight in a very short amount of time, and then everybody was like, you got to eat, you got to eat, you got to eat, and then I became bulimic, and I
Mhm.
dealt with that for a bazillion years.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is really resonating with me even, hearing
Mhm.
this is that, like you said, that just the thought of exercise just, you know, totally revolts me, right? But the
Yeah.
movement, I love this. This is
Seeing it
beautiful.
as endorphins, seeing it as quality time with the people you care about, and
Yeah,
celebrating those non-scale victories.
that's
Celebrating
amazing.
celebrating that you're able to do errands and not feel winded. People
Mm,
celebrating that they can be with their kids and play on the ground with their kids and not feel totally winded and need a 3-hour nap at the end of that. Like these small, I mean, they're huge, but it seems small. For
mm,
people that don't appreciate the context and for people that haven't lived it, these things are microscopic. But for
right.
those of us that have lived it and for those of us that are in recovery from one thing or another, oh my gosh, that's almost as big as graduating.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so
Wow.
all the little steps on the way to being friends with your body deserve to be celebrated. And helping people shift from exercise to movement is something that I love to do.
I'm telling everybody. I'll give you credit, but I'm telling everybody that.
Okay.
I will give you credit. Okay, so the third thing on your
The
list, tell
third,
me,
yeah,
yes.
the third thing is dignity preserving conflict resolution. And that is super important because um, it really focuses on taking shame out of the conversation and letting people take accountability and ownership of their actions while honoring they're still a good person. There is a big difference between you are bad, you are a screw up, or like think and talking like that versus what you did was wrong, but
Mm,
I love you. Or what I'm not okay with what you did that made me uncomfortable. Let's make a plan because this relationship is important to me. And just kind of having an undertone of at the end of the day, I still care about you. At the end of the day, you're still important to me. But this this action or this event that happened between us made me uncomfortable and I need to speak up about it. Because if I don't speak up about it, it will come out in the way that my body behaves. It will come out in GI upsets. It will come out in sleep disturbances. It will come out in appetite changes. It will come out in drinking urges, which is a whole different thing. But if I don't speak up about what I need and what makes me uncomfortable, I am giving my body permission to be angry with me.
wow.
And so,
This,
dignity preserving conflict resolution is essential because it keeps important relationships intact. It keeps those like we don't our loved ones, our family, our friends, the people that we care about in our life. We don't want them going to bed thinking that we don't love them or that we don't care. We can have a horrible day, but at the end of the day, the people we care about need to know that they're loved and supported. And
mm,
we deserve that from others.
Absolutely.
That's equally as important, is that we deserve the love and the care that we give others. We are not our own exception to anything. And the sooner we absorb that, the better we will be for it.
Yeah, I love that. Wow. That's I'm using that too.
Go for it.
That is I and it's, and then if you come off the wrong way and you tell somebody, "Hey," and it doesn't usually come out that eloquently, right? That when
Yeah.
somebody does something, it's just you're attacking the person, like you said, right?
Yeah.
And and then that just never ends well in any
It
way
doesn't.
for either person, right?
It ends up with the person feeling like they're a bad person, or feeling like maybe this relationship is not salvageable. But
Mm,
when I mean, the people in our lives that we love deserve to know that, regardless of whatever, like, unless it's something egregious.
yeah,
If it's something egregious that, like, requires law enforcement or whatever, or healthcare providers to get involved, then that's a totally different topic. But if it's something kinda like an everyday argument or whatever, people mess up,
yeah,
and we if it's not egregious, we need to just give space and let them know, like, "Hey, you messed up. You're still a good person. I am going to take a couple days to recover from this because this hurt me, but we will find our way back to each other. The relationship is just on pause." And there's a lot of space between pain and neutrality, and there's also a lot of space between neutrality and friendship.
mm,
And both, like, the distance between pain and neutrality have certain steps, and the space between neutrality and friendship have certain steps. And we need to decide which relationships in our life are worth it,
right.
because there are relationships in our life that are absolutely worth it.
Yep. And sometimes we don't see that with someone who's maybe family and is, like you said, goes to another level, right? That
Right. Yeah,
is
and
totally inappropriate.
right, and for the things that are egregious, or for the people that appear to not care,
Mm,
or just, like, you have self-advocated many times, and the effort to make things better is not there. Their effort to make things better for your relationship is not there. So, also, part of all of this is knowing, okay, I'm self advocating and doing the best I can to be there for this person, but this person is openly and consistently disrespecting me and not honoring my boundaries. And if that is the case, pause the relationship.
yeah.
And if that is the case, then also what comes with pausing the relationship is, do you ever want to press resume on the relationship?
Mm, right, exactly.
Um, it'll completely depend on which relationship it is. But for others that are in, maybe they're in active addiction, or maybe they're in active something else that has control over their life. And we need to make decisions that protect our peace and that protect our recovery. We cannot put ourselves in harm's way for other people, and nor should we be the sole support for anybody who is healing. They need their healthcare providers, they need other people, and the responsibility for healing is on them. The responsibility for healing and recovery is on them. We are one part of their social support. If they try to put all of that responsibility on us, that is dangerous.
Yeah,
Putting it
absolutely.
very simply, that is dangerous
Super dangerous. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
undeserved.
Yep. Wow. Love that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. The the last part of the last one is emotion regulation and expression. Now, I did not know that I was autistic until I was in my mid-20s, until after undergrad. And I do not see autism or any other part of neurodiversity as a disability per se. I see it as a different way of seeing, absorbing, and interacting with the world.
Mm,
Neurodiversity specifically refers to autism, ADHD, ADD, learning differences, and sensory support needs. People will say that autism is a spectrum, but th- that is factually true. However, um, when people say autism spectrum, they are talking about disorder. And that is something that morally does not sit well with me.
mm,
The thing that I do relate to when it comes to autism being a spectrum is eye contact. I completely nail eye contact when it's logical. When I spend the conversation in the logical space of my brain,
mm-hmm.
I can maintain and sustain eye contact through pretty much anything. When I have to go internal and speak about emotional stuff, I prefer to write it down and read it.
Wow.
And I did not know this until 2 years ago.
Wow.
So, my thing with emotional expression and regulation is learning, especially for people that are diagnosed later in their life, learning how do you feel and express your emotions
Mm,
and throw away all of what you think it should be.
right.
How do you feel and express each emotion when it is up to you? When the ball is in your court, how are you feeling and expressing your emotions? Now go do that and take self advocacy and use that. So, how that looks like for me is in my relationship, I'm in a long term relationship with my boyfriend, and I have a communication journal that I write my big feelings in. And I write it, and I will either read it to him or leave it for him to read. And he and I have a conversation whenever he is ready. And that has worked for us. Now, had I had this strategy when I was younger with family, my whole world in early childhood would be different. And so that is why self advocacy, somatic peace, dignity preserving conflict resolution, and emotion regulation and expression are so deeply intertwined.
Mm,
They cannot exist without the others.
other, right.
And in order to, nothing is ever going to be perfected, nothing is ever going to be completely finished. But my hope with providing these as my focus for is to at least make the experience of recovery and the human experience of walking through life easier and more bearable for other people. If I can be louder than somebody else's depressive thoughts, that is a win for me. If I can love them a little louder than their depression shouts at them, that's a win for me.
Yeah. I totally get that. And I also, I prefer to write things down.
Mhm.
I do.
Yeah.
I'm the same way when it comes to expressing myself. I really am not good at it in person and like on
Mhm.
the spot. No, I give me a minute, let me write it. I can I can write it down or type it up and I it
Mhm.
flows.
Yeah,
But yeah, but
and that yeah, and that needs to be celebrated, that needs to be put into like, that needs to be as mainstream as somebody just talking verbally.
right, right, right.
If
And I
you
think
gotta
we
draw out your response, that's cool too.
yeah, and I don't think we realize that. It's like
Mhm.
we just don't we think everybody should behave or react or do things as we do. And if they don't, then it's not right. And
Right.
that's totally I mean, I love this. I love every minute of this. So how did you find out that you were neurodivergent? How did this come about?
So, how it came about was extremely unconventional. My one of my professors in undergrad told me that she believes I lack empathy and I need to get checked out for autism.
Hmm.
She just told me that at the end of class in front of 5 or 6 of my peers. And she was a psychology professor, and she was also the director of the university's counseling, the university's counseling center. And she was also the chair of the psychology program. And my major was in human development and psychology. So this woman had a lot of power in my life. And she was not in this context, she was in her role as a teacher. She was not in her role as a clinician.
Mm.
And that really messed me up. Um, because for the majority of my life, I was very close and had excellent relationship with my pediatrician, with my doctors, with my medical team. I had such a great relationship with them. And for her to drop this kind of thing on me was, I felt was extremely disrespectful to my relationship with my own providers.
Mm.
And I felt I went through a very long period of grieving the support that I could have had, um, when I found out. I put forward the request to get assessed, but, I told my primary care doctor that I should probably be assessed for autism. They put in a request to somebody that does those types of assessments, a psychiatrist that specializes in autistic assessments, and it turned out my official diagnosis was Asperger's high functioning autism.
Mm.
That's a whole different topic and podcast episode,
Yeah.
but but that was my official diagnosis and the process that I officially went through.
Okay.
But after the very long period of grief, after the long period of figuring out, like, actually the majority of the social reason for my depression was this reality that I was autistic and never knew about it.
Mm.
And, um, but after that, I began learning as much as possible and having labels for my experiences. And once I got labels for my experiences, I was able to say, hey, actually, this could help so many other people. And I could weave this into my career. And like, I could shorten the curve for hundreds of people. And
Right.
that's what I'm on a mission to do.
So where were you at in your career at the time that this was happening?
I was,
Happened.
um, I was about 3 months into my work as an addiction counselor.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm. And and also part of my reasoning for switching to a non-clinical role and creating this company was in a pandemic, I I did not, and I was in a pandemic and I was in a healthcare setting, and the way that the addiction industry, the um, addiction counselor industry is set up is there are 3 accrediting bodies that provide certification as an addiction counselor. And the certification as an addiction counselor process, which I went through, is 1 year of schools on Saturdays at a in-person in-person class with an instructor, and the requirement was high school diploma or GED for addiction counselor. I went in with a master's degree. So my my bachelor's was in human development and psychology. My master's was in forensic psychology, and I started my PsyD in psychology and started work as an addiction counselor in the same week.
Oh my god.
And I like as I um the more that I lived with the day in day out realities of being an addiction counselor, the more I realized, holy heck, the that like a high school diploma is not enough to be an effective counselor. I felt under-equipped because these people were coming to me with undiagnosed and untreated, mental health issues and trauma and stuff. I felt under-equipped, and I had a master's in
Wow.
forensic psychology, and so it hurt my heart so much that I wasn't able to serve the way that I wanted to, that I had to jump through hoops because of Medi-Cal and Medicare.
Right.
I didn't wanna do that, and so I created my own path, and I this was because I know that the way that my brain works, because I'm autistic, I need autonomy, I need structure, I need the ability to I basically need the ability to create my own mold and to, have a bit more authority over what I can do. And I also need to take a more directive role because I'm
Mm.
not okay with people suffering more than they need to.
They need to, right? Let's shorten the road to
Yeah,
to
I'm
recovery,
not
right?
okay. Like,
Right.
and I also knew because I saw patients going into appointments with their psychiatrists and doctors and being overwhelmed and not knowing which questions to ask, and I was cranky that I couldn't just go with them. Like, I would like, they could sign a release of information, but then it would result in a very long game of phone tag. I would much rather, and now I have the ability to, have them sign a release of information, go with them to whatever appointment they gotta go to, and decode whatever the mental health or the legal or whatever specialist they're seeing, decode their the conversation for them and ask a few more questions in a way that empowers them.
Not just it's too autopilot and it's too one size fits all, right?
Is and like example is people with addiction history that are going into a psychiatrist's office for the first time. They need to know how to protect their medications from others in the home. They need to know about that's called diversion, medication
Mm,
diversion risk. Um, they also need to know, like, they shouldn't get anything that's habit forming. They really shouldn't. If they have an addiction history, there's other options besides stuff that is addictive and habit forming. You do not need you do not need benzos. That's gonna be a hill that I die on if you have an addiction history, if you have a personal addiction history, you can do without the benzos. There's other different types of medicines that are plenty available that having those not be an option is not going to crumble the world.
Right, right, right,
It will
right,
be okay, I promise, and there's no shame in saying that you don't want benzos. There's no shame in it. It's self-advocacy in a medical setting, and it's something
right,
you deserve. It's something that it just because you might not be able to handle benzos given addiction history, that does not make you a bad or weak person. There's so much heart that goes into these types of conversations that I can't possibly put into it if I was in a clinical license setting.
mm, wow. And how do you handle that when it comes to changing that, like, how do you address that in such a widespread it's such a
I mean,
widespread issue, right?
yeah, I mean, just getting people to understand, like, what you deserve to make you can make decisions that protect your recovery in every single context, including medical, and
Right,
that being honest with your care providers, being honest with your doctors and stuff like that is only going to result in better care.
right.
It will. It will be nerve-wracking as can be initially, but it will result in better care, and especially if you're not going it alone.
That's the ultimate result,
Yeah.
right? Is
Nobody should be going it alone.
right, right. And do you find that this is particular age related, or what do you find? Because I know you were in your mid-20s when this came
Mhm.
to light. How many, what do you think the types of numbers are there that are people that find out so late in life? And like you said, they've already gone through the school
Yeah,
system, they've already done all of that. And now you find out all this, you know, all the pain you may have gone through was how do you that's another
yeah.
recovery, right?
I mean, it is, and fighting off imposter syndrome and
Oh, yeah.
fighting off that, like, just because you've lived your entire life without support doesn't mean you don't deserve support.
Right. Exactly.
Just because
Exactly.
just because you've been winging it and doing your best and burning on all cylinders as a way of life since you were verbal doesn't mean that you
Mm,
deserve this.
right. Right. Exactly.
Living in a constant state of physical stress it may be your normal, but it is sure not deserved and sure not, going to result in anything positive.
Right, exactly, exactly. And I
Yeah.
and you like you said, it's all of the above. It's the mental, it's the physical. Like, I didn't know, I never realized how much the body responds to these things, I just never occurred to me. It's just something that people don't talk about. It's like three separate things, your mind, body, and soul.
Yeah,
It's three different things happening, and that's not the case. And it's
right.
just I think that's just coming to light that your body I actually just found out about
And
cortisol and all that stuff, and I'm
yeah,
like, "Why didn't I nobody tell me this?" You know?
at least the past 5 to 10 years, there's been so much more research and so much more, like, social awareness around the connection between the mind and the body. I will tell you that from age 6 or 7, whenever there was a school conflict or there was a family conflict and I did not speak up about it, I got either knocked on my ass with a head cold, excuse my language, or I
Mm.
was up most of the night with anxiety runs, or I had constipation,
Right, right,
or like my body would physically be acting out in a state of stress. And my pediatrician and my doctors kept on saying IBS, kept on saying insomnia, kept on saying all these other things. it was. I did not have the strategy to self-advocate. I did not I was not around enough adults that I don't think I was around enough adults that would do anything about what I would have put it forward if I did
Right.
self-advocate. So and I was getting bullied significantly in middle school because I was different and didn't know it. And the school administrators were not adults that acted like they they were more concerned about, like, school politics
Mhm.
than actually doing what's best for kids and resolving bully problems.
Right.
And so I had all of the strategy. I knew what needed to happen, but I had none of the power to implement it.
Right?
I had all the strategy. I knew exactly what was needed, but none of the power or authority to make any of the changes.
And,
So
that's
that
that
resulted in a physical mess for me for years.
but I have a question. Did you consciously, and I'm sorry, my dogs
Yeah, it's
are, if
fine.
you're watching this video, my dogs are going
Dogs are
crazy,
sweet. They're
but
fine.
they're sweet, but, so I apologize. But, um, did you find that you knew consciously what to do, or was it like in, because this happened to me when I was a kid, when so I was bullied also horribly, horribly, like my whole I
Yeah.
hated school. I despised school. I
Mhm.
quit school when I was 16 because I hated every second of it.
Yeah.
I never felt like I fit in. I always felt like the outsider. And I always I don't know if this happened to you, but for me, I always felt so different, like
Mhm.
when other kids would bully other kids. I'll never forget there was I think it was third grade, maybe third or fourth grade, and there was a kid who was, you know, you could tell he was physically disabled, and it was in our class, and he was in our, regular class, and the kids would just make fun of him like crazy. I mean,
Mhm.
it was sickening. But for me, I was 8 or 9 years old. I was sickened by it, and I would stick
Right.
up for him. And I literally went home in tears. And I told my
Mhm.
mom, I can't be in that class. I can't deal with people picking on him. It would just drive me
Right.
insane.
Yeah.
And they actually had to switch my classroom. I mean, instead of addressing the problem, they put
Yeah.
me in a different classroom, right? But
Right.
I always had this innate sense that things were wrong, that it was being done
Yeah.
wrong. Did you have that, or did you feel, was it like a real conscious thing? Like, I know this is XYZ, this is how it should be.
So, my middle school is very interesting. My middle school was extremely small. There was a K through 5 building and across the street from the 6th through 8th building. And the 6th through 8th building, I distinctly remember this girl that this bully, this main girl who was the bully came in to the school at uh I was in 7th grade, she was in 7th grade. And I remember getting some context about her, and I knew that I had found out that she had some experience in foster care, and she was suspended from a public school 7 times for behavioral issues, and my who I would consider my best friend at the time, um, she joined forces with the school bully, and I completely logically understood that because my best friend at the time had history in foster care as well.
Oh,
And
wow.
so in my mind, I was I was cool with I was cool with losing my best friend to the school bully because I felt like because of their shared reality of growing up with foster care, being in middle school, like, I felt like that was a stronger bond that needed to happen.
Wow.
I intuitively felt like they need each other to get through this period of life. So if I've gotta get bullied because of this, okay, fine. That like, I have no idea why I thought I felt that way, but I just knew that the school bully would be able to help out my best friend process some of her stuff way better than I would be able to, because I
Wow.
did not share that part of reality.
Right.
Um,
Right.
it was extremely painful for me, and
Hold on
most of
one
my friends.
second. Sorry. Come here. Come. Come here. She's going crazy. Hold on. Sorry.
It's alright. It was extremely painful for me, and, eventually we found our way back to each other. It
You
wasn't.
did.
Yeah. Yeah, so my best friend from middle school and I are now Facebook friends, and we're now, making our way to being friends again, but I don't hold any of that against her, nor would I ever, simply because of, I very much honor and respect the people that have matching, parts. I call them parallel points in their life. I
Right.
I honor that, I respect that, and I give space for that all the time, and I'm constantly
Mm.
trying to put people together that have different life parallel points, because people that have different life parallel points, they will they have the ability to be each other's great some of each other's greatest supports, and that's something that definitely deserves to be honored. Regardless
Wow.
of, um
You're
regar
personal, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
regardless of, I can pause a relationship, which I did. I paused my relationship with my best friend and proceeded with my own life, in full faith knowing that she would come back to me, and that this was just a
Wow.
season.
Wow. And what happened to the other girl? Do you
I'm
know?
not sure.
You're
I
not
don't
sure.
know.
Yeah.
She she was a very mean bully to me and most of the other, and my guy friend in 7th grade actually left schools because he was getting picked on so much. He peed his pants
Wow.
in class multiple times because he was getting picked on and teased so much.
Oh,
He was one of the sweetest people I've ever met, but no, I don't know what happened to the other person. I wish her
wow.
well, but I
Yeah.
don't. I wish her well. I don't have any ill will or any ill feelings, but yeah,
That's
I
huge, though. That's
yeah,
huge, not having those ill feelings. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
I
That
I I
takes
don't because I only saw about 5% of her world every day when she came into school. I don't know what was going on in the other 90%, and I can't say that I would have been a better person than she was if I was dealing with the same situation.
true, true. And it's my mom would say what because I was like I said, I quit school because of being bullied.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I remember my mom telling me, and I had no understanding of that at the time, but my mom said, "Oh,
Mhm.
those kids that act out or that do this or they're not getting attention at home or there's something going on at home
Mhm.
or they have some kind of, back then it was kind of like, you don't know what's going on right behind closed doors." But my mom would always tell me that kids that do those types of things, that there's something happening. There's something else
There
going
is.
on. And obviously back then we didn't know about a lot of this stuff, but I think of it now and I'm like, wow, she was right because,
Yeah.
now you start to see that people that act that way, it's not you. It's really
Right.
not, right?
And and a very important conclusion that I made, I found this, yeah, I found this several years ago, that just because I can understand why something happened does not make it okay.
Right.
Just
Right.
because I can we can understand the why without being okay or comfortable with it. And
Right.
we can understand the why and still know that we didn't deserve it. We can
Right.
understand the why and still hold space for feeling how we need to feel. We can
That's
understand the why and still distance ourselves. We can
that's
understand the
true.
why. Yeah.
That's very true. Doesn't mean that you need to accept their behavior.
Right. Just because you understand doesn't mean you deserve it.
Right. Right, exactly. I remember I was in a divorce group and they would say they were very, the whole chapter was about forgiveness. And I was like, there's no way I can forgive this person. Like, that's not happening,
Mhm.
until somebody said, it doesn't mean you have to trust them. And,
Right.
it doesn't mean you need to let them back in your life. And it kind of like the same thing, same concept. Like, yeah, you can understand why they're acting the way they act, but it certainly doesn't mean you need to accept the behavior. Right.
And it doesn't mean they get access to again,
Right.
especially if they repeat the if they go on
Exactly.
repeating stuff, it doesn't mean they get access.
Right. Exactly. And that was huge for me because that was a huge turning point for me mentally to say, oh, okay. Now it made sense. And again, it was one of those things which is part of my whole journey with this podcast and everything is to for someone to hear that one thing that makes them go, "Oh, yes, that makes sense. Now I get it. Now I can heal from that. It makes such a big
Yeah.
difference, right? So
Yeah.
that's part of it. Yeah, definitely. So what's the future hold for your consulting company and I'll ask you a couple more questions.
So the future for my consulting company, I think, is very exciting. I think the future for the consulting company is business to business services, like my partnership with the Unschool Academy of Business, Arts, and Science, and the individual services. So um, my individual services basically work with neurodivergent women, and I can work with kids or men, but they will come with the woman. So, like a part of a package, they will be a package deal with the woman. I am not,
Okay.
I don't want to work with kids independently just
Okay.
because it's such a nightmare parental consent wise.
Okay.
I want the if I work with kids, I want the mom to bring the kids to me. I don't wanna have to go through an uphill battle of trying to convince the mom that the kid needs any kinda help. I just want her to be on the same page, and I want
Right.
it to be an easy consent process, and, um, I could also work with men within the context of a like a partnership, like the a woman and her partner, woman and boyfriend, or woman and husband, something like that.
Okay. Okay.
Um, but I am so excited for what the future holds
I'm
and
excited for you because this is like
very open to it.
very awesome. I mean, this is such a beautiful thing you're doing, and I see huge success coming your way. I know it's not all about the success, it's about helping people, right? So I wish you so much success with that and touching
Thank you.
lives in that way is so beautiful.
Thank
Um,
you.
what would you, what's your definition of bliss?
My definition of bliss is being friends with your body and um, keeping the people in your life close to you while having just having the things and the people that matter to you.
Awesome.
Mhm.
And so how can people get in touch with you? Of course, I will leave everything in the description, but
Yeah.
you'd like to just
How
mention the
yeah,
best way to reach
people
you.
I think the best way to reach me is to book a discovery call at,
Okay.
calendly.com/, Hope Reignited/discovery and see how we can be a part of each other's lives going forward.
Um, I will put that in the notes. And sorry, my dog is barking again.
No worries at all.
And and I wish you much success. I would love to meet again and do this again because I think we have a lot more little things inside of those
Oh, yeah, we
things,
do.
to expand, deep dive into. I would love to deep
Yeah.
dive into some of these. We didn't even touch a lot of the stuff I wanted to talk to you about. So I think we need to do another call for sure.
Okay, we will.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Katie. And thank you guys for being here. I hope this was helpful and keep it coming. And we'll talk soon. Thank you, Katie.
All right. Thank you so much, Lisa.
All right.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
one.
You too.